Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Hogarth's Global Astrology. Know your planets, know yourself, or know your nation, know yourself. The two are interchangeable. All right, so this is a little recording here. I almost went live actually. I'm so used to pressing the live button. But I wanted to because I want to show some clips and all this stuff. So hopefully sound is all good and all of that jazz. And what I wanted to share this evening, you're going to be getting this when you see this video. It's going to be Saturday evening. It's small hours of the morning now. I've just come back from playing tennis actually with the gents. It was really good. Yeah, good fun today. But going to be tomorrow, my whole Saturday tomorrow. I'll be out, I'll be out with friends and spending time with people and stuff like that. So you'll see this evening. Anyway, so we need to talk about, in this reflections, I want to talk about stupidity. Yeah. And why stupidity can often rise to power. Yeah. Why stupidity can often rise to power. And I feel that this is particularly pertinent because of the scenario that we're in, particularly in the United States. But this is a phenomenon all over the world. But in particular, we can see, if we think of Duck Larange, yeah, who we know is not academically bright at all. However, as you know, I've been saying for years that he has reptilian intelligence, which is still something. And it was really interesting because when I went to that Guardian chat the other day, the host actually said that. He used the exact words. Trump has reptilian intelligence. Academically, no. But the whole point is that what I'm going to share with you is this video, which has done a little kind of treatise. It's about Machiavelli again. You've seen that because remember, I always like to get a philosopher in there on the reflections video as a way of examining, digesting certain phenomena in society and why things happen as they do. So I'm going to share this video with you. I'm going to share about, this video is about 28 minutes long. I'm going to put in the video description underneath this video so you guys can click on it and then you can see it for yourself. It is a brilliant study. I'm going to show you about 4 minutes because the first 4 minutes that really kind of gets the point across, and then we're going to talk a little bit more. And then what I'm going to show you is a clip from Van Jones, which is looking at why black voters, for example, voted for Trump. Yeah. Now, just to set the record straight, 92% of black folks, voted for Kamala. Yeah. So this isn't kind of, it's, they made the right choice. Yeah, let's put it that way. I think 92% of those are women, about 85% of those were men. So very, very highly, they voted, but that still means there were millions of people that didn't. And the reason why I'm including this clip is because listen to what they say for the reasons why they voted for Trump. Even though they were given a contradictory, like they were giving a bit of pushback by Van Jones. And it substantiates what I was talking about before, well, what in terms of the video clip that I'm going to share with you now. And the things that Machiavelli observed and said about human nature, how appearances matter more than concrete reality when people are making up their minds, and how people choose comfort and simplicity over nuance and complexity when they want to feel secure, particularly about the future. Yeah, and it's a kind of a bias that we have. So I'm going to line up the clip now. I'm going to play it for about 4 minutes, and then I'm going to be talking back with you, giving my thoughts, and then playing you a clip. And let's just let's do share screen here. Let's do share screen. And then let's do, yeah, video, yes. All right, I'm going to press play. Let's dive in. Let me just make sure the volume is up. 1 minute. Make sure the volume is up to the top. Make sure the volume is up to the top here. All right, here we go. And read the quote. I'll actually pause it. So you see here, straight off the bat, it is necessary for a prince, a leader, who wishes to maintain his position to learn how not to be good and to use his knowledge or not to use it according to necessity. So one of the key things Machiavelli said, and this was a controversial thing, but it's nonetheless true, which is that the prince or the leader must at least appear to be good, even if they are not. In the case of Degrasse, he's not even bothered with that. But anyway, I'll keep pressing play.
Have you ever looked at someone in a position of power and thought, how on earth did they get there? We've all witnessed it. People who seem thoroughly incompetent rising to positions of authority while more capable individuals remain stuck in the shadows. Think of history's Emperor Nero fiddling while Rome burned, or more recently, corporate leaders like Elizabeth Holmes building a multi-billion-dollar company on technology that never worked.
By the way, I don't think fiddles existed in the time of Emperor Nero, just to be. I just have to add that little caveat. There were lots of different instruments, but I don't think they had fiddles. Anyway.
It's a pattern so common it feels almost deliberate. But what if it is? What if there's a twisted logic behind why the least qualified often end up with the most influence? Today, we're diving into one of history's most misunderstood political philosophers, Niccolo Machiavelli, and his brutal insights into why stupidity and power so often go hand in hand. But this isn't just ancient philosophy, it's a psychological phenomenon that shapes our world today, from corporate boardrooms to political offices. The uncomfortable truth: sometimes being smart is exactly what keeps you from gaining power. And understanding this paradox might be the key to recognizing the manipulative forces operating in our society, or even helping you navigate your own path to influence.
There's DIY, and there's doing
Oh,
it
an advert. Sorry.
yourself.
In the 16th century, Florence, exiled from the political life he loved, Niccolo Machiavelli penned what would become one of the most controversial political treatises in history, The Prince. Unlike the idealistic political philosophers before him, Machiavelli wasn't concerned with how rulers should behave in a perfect world. He focused on how power actually worked in the real one. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. This statement cuts to the heart of Machiavelli's thinking. He understood that perception often matters more than reality when it comes to acquiring and maintaining power.
So just to pause it there. So perception in the majority of people's minds matters more than reality. And this is a very important factor because we see it happening here. Like, Trump is obviously incompetent. Factually, he is incompetent. He has been bankrupt 6 times. He managed to bankrupt not one but 2 casinos, yeah, where the house always wins. It's very, very, very difficult to bankrupt a casino. You have to be immensely incompetent to be able to do that. There's a string of whole other litany of failures and all of this kind of stuff. Yet, what is the thing that is constantly spoken about? Oh, the art of the deal. Yeah, his book, which was ghost written, by the way, ghost written. Oh, but Trump is a successful businessman. Yeah, he's a successful businessman. He's going to run our nation like a business. Yeah. And people think that is a good thing. Because in their mind, they equate what the perception is. People are seeing the riches. Yeah. They're seeing the ostentatiousness of Trump, of Degrasse. Yeah, where, people are seeing the hotels and the and the vulgarities which clearly entice them. The gold toilet seats, the gold washing bowls. Oh, he's got this tower, he's got that tower. Irrespective of the fact that so much of it has come from, Russian money, etc., all of this stuff, and that he's diddled and dimed and swindled so many people, particularly as well with his father when it came to renting, when the father was renting the properties, who really actually was good with his money, but he wouldn't rent at all to black people, not at all. Yeah. There was one woman, that black woman, that was able to rent from him, and when he realized what had happened, he switched her heating off in the middle of a New York winter, and she froze to death. Yeah, so that's also interesting as well when I show you the Van Jones clips. But what is, people are enamored with the facade, with the reality TV, with the hoopla and hootenanny of Trump, and they project. They see what he has, and they want that for themselves, and they're like, well, you know what, if I vote for him, I'm gonna get that. Yes, so many people thought, I'm gonna get rich from Trump, and I don't give a damn about all this other stuff that they're talking about, because for me that's just irrelevant. As long as I'm rich, as long as I do all right, me and mine, screw everyone else, I'm going to vote for him. Yeah, now we're getting the reality check. So anyway, let me just press play.
Herein lies the first clue to our paradox. Appearing competent is often more important than actually being competent. Machiavelli observed that rulers who display too much intelligence often create problems for themselves. Why? Because intelligence usually comes with certain traits that can be liabilities in power struggles. Traits like nuanced thinking, ethical considerations, and self-awareness. Consider what happens when a genuinely intelligent person enters a power structure. They tend to see complexity where others see simplicity. They acknowledge limitations where others make sweeping promises. They question themselves where others project absolute confidence. In settings where bold assertion trumps thoughtful deliberation, these intellectual traits become handicaps. Look at the contrast between someone like Socrates, who questioned everything and was ultimately sentenced to death by the Athenian democracy, versus populist leaders throughout history who rose to power by offering simple, absolute certainties. Socrates' famous, "I know that I know nothing," wisdom made him a philosophical giant, but a political failure. Meanwhile, countless leaders have risen by claiming they alone have all the answers. A controversial 2017 study from the Journal of Management suggested something that might make you uncomfortable. Intelligence correlates positively with leadership effectiveness only up to an IQ of about 120. Beyond that point, additional intelligence actually becomes a hindrance to leadership emergence. The researchers suggested that exceptionally intelligent people struggle to connect with and influence others who can't follow their complex thinking patterns. Think about that. Being too smart might actually prevent you from gaining leadership positions in the first place. Whether or not you buy into that study, it challenges us to rethink what kind of intelligence actually helps someone gain power.
Right. So I'll stop sharing there, but I hope you found that really interesting. So you can see, like that study, and there's other citations and studies put in this, and this is why I'm sharing this video, because I think it's such an important thing to discuss and talk about. So what that study shows is that demonstrable intelligence has no greater gain, as it were, in terms of impact and effectiveness, in terms of leadership and stuff, above 120 IQ. Now, the average is about 100. Yeah, the average, that's the bell curve. Yeah, the average is about 100. 120 is pretty intelligent, but it's not genius. Once you start getting into, once you start getting into 128, 129, you're already significantly more intelligent than an average person. I think 132 is the entry requirements for Mensa. Once you're in Mensa, I think you're already in the top 3%, something like that. I think it's 5 to 3%. I can't remember exactly. And why is that? It's because in terms of the bell curve, the mean average, and the way that the human brain works is the human brain struggles with complexity. One of the most difficult things for human beings to do, particularly at this stage of our thinking, coming out of the Kali Yuga cycle, we're now in the Dwapara Yuga cycle that I've been talking about, but we've come out of a period of around about almost 3,000 years or so of where the collective consciousness and IQ was low. Yeah. The thinking requires a tremendous amount for the brain. Like it actually uses, in fact, one of the organs that uses the most calories and the most sugar and starch and stuff like that is the brain. Yeah. And they say, you know, if you look at evolution and stuff, and, you know, I really do believe the human race was tinkered with around about 200,000 years ago, because you can see it on the genome and stuff like that. But putting that aside, this is why omegas, for example, are so important, particularly to eat when you're a child, which is basically oily fish, because the brain is mainly made up of fat. And one of the factors that can contribute a lot to a person's intelligence is not only consuming those omega fats, which omega-3s, for example, can only come from the diet. The body can't make it. So you need your salmon, your sardines, you know, your oily fish and all of that kind of stuff. But also as well, the mother has to be eating it as well, because then those omegas will go through into the breast milk, you know, and making the child potentially more intelligent. So, of course, food and diet is a massive part of that as well, because being able to think complex thoughts also requires a quite a decent level of nutrition. Yeah, your brain literally has to have the food, you know, the calories, literally the calories and quality calories to do it. Yeah. And I'm debating whether or not to there was someone on one of my videos, she was just saying, oh, again, one man show, and she says, why are you talking, or why do you keep jabbering on? And I wrote back to her, I said, do you say the same to Rachel Maddow? Yeah. Do you accuse her of jabbering on? It's a one-person show. It's a one-person show. That's the whole point. When you watch a one-person show, it's that stream of consciousness. Imagine if I just sit here and just be quiet, yeah, for like 10 seconds. What kind of show is that? Me just sitting there in silence, yeah? Clearly the person is not very bright, yeah? And the reason why I'm saying this is, and why am I connecting it with food? Because I thought, you know what? I have a feeling this person is coming out with this very lazy critique, really. Because I said, look, it's a one-person show, and I don't mind critique, as you know. I don't mind critique. But I said to them, look, give me a critique where I can actually improve something. You know, I said, no one's forcing you to watch this video. No one's forcing you to watch this one-man show, where obviously I have to talk to camera, just like every one-person show does, yeah? Unless it's going to be playing a musical instrument or something. And I just thought to myself, I just read, you know, because, you know, I'm quite psychic. I don't make a big deal of it. And I just read into it, and I just thought, I bet this person eats terrible food. Anyway, I went and had a look. And they do have a YouTube channel, and I've lined up a clip for you of what this person is eating. Yeah. And it's, again, not too much shade to them, but this, I'm making a wider argument, because diet counts. It really, really does. Diet and nutrition really is a massive contributor to brain health. And in fact, I can only speak for the UK. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but there's been studies where into Alzheimer's and stuff, and they're now thinking of calling it type 3 diabetes. There's a correlation between high blood sugar, consistently high blood sugar, and Alzheimer's, and how it produces plaques in the brain, which of course is very much connected with diet, and particularly the Western diet. But as we all know, and again, it's not a cuss, but we know that the American diet is very, very starchy, very, very high in carbs, refined sugars, additives, etc., etc. We all know this, yeah. Soda pop, you know, McDonald's, etc. All of which are little kind of sinful treats that, you know, we may enjoy from time to time, but we can't eat these things on a consistent basis, where for a lot of people that is their diet. So I just wanted to make that as a wider part of an argument. Right, so what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to show you Van Jones. And this is where, now remember what this video was establishing. What are we reflecting on? How people are taken in by appearances, how people do not want to think, how personality and being bombastic can trump, you know, quite literally, and how appropriate that Trump is called Trump, but can trump logic and being able to vote for your own interests. So I'm going to share the clip now. Let's do present. And then we'll talk a little bit more about that. And let's do share screen. Here we are, Van Jones. Here, I'm going to share. Audio is on.
Royal. Usually when you think about a Trump voter, you think about a white male with a red hat on. But there were millions of black voters who picked Donald Trump this time. So I came here to talk to 3 of them. And I was surprised by what I found. You weren't always a Republican.
No, actually, I come from a family that was like super Democratic. My first time voting, I voted Democrat. I voted for Joe Biden.
What about Trump appealed to you?
Am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah, you can.
I mean, part of it is he's an asshole. I like authenticity.
You voted for Obama in...
Right, we just have to pause it there. And when I'll have to post a link to this video as well. When you read through the comments, it is fascinating. Yeah, it is fascinating. In fact, what I'll do is I'll click up on the comments so we can have a look. So do you see? He said basically, I vote for Trump because he's an asshole. I'm just like, wow, you are admitting that Duck L'Orange is an asshole. And then the next thing he said was, because I like authenticity. So do you see here, by Trump being bombastic, arrogant, loud, an asshole, as this guy says in his own words, he saw that as a stamp of authenticity. He felt like it was more genuine. When really what we're kind of looking at here, this is a case of projection, where, in my opinion, where he is wanting to be like that. He is wanting to say those things. He is wanting to be rude and tell everyone to go, you know what, themselves. And I think this is so much of what Trump's appeal is that what you would consider sane and rational people felt emboldened, felt they had the license to not be polite. Because being part of a responsible citizen in a society means following certain niceties, following certain rules. And some people see that as a burden. Anyway, let's look at the rest.
Then you voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, but 2020 you voted for Donald Trump. What made the change?
I began listening to someone, her name is Candace Owens, and I read her book, and it just opened my eyes to maybe he's not this person that I have been led to believe that he was.
So you voted against Trump in 2016,
yes,
but then in 2020 you voted for him?
Absolutely.
And Candace Owens, for those that don't know, she's a black woman, a podcaster, very popular podcaster. I think she had some connections with Fox News once upon a time, but or more kind of, she's very much on the right wing, much more on the right wing. And she, for example, has made various arguments talking about, I wouldn't quite say maybe advocating for slavery, but she's certainly put a little bit of a spin on there. And there is this argument that slavery, they gained life skills. Yeah, they gained life skills. And she's become very, very influential She's quite a controversial character. She is intelligent, though. This is one of the things with Candace Owens, is that she is actually an intelligent person, so her arguments can be extremely persuasive. But I would say she's a bit confused and a bit misguided. Yeah. However, she has wiped the floor with people who have tried to kind of tackle and take her on. So she's quite a complex character, but Candace Owens is certainly not where I'm going to be getting my sources of information from. Let's put it that way. But each to their own. I'll carry on.
Why?
I saw how things were going during his first term, and I was pleasantly surprised, and I was pleased with what was happening. I saw the economy getting better. I saw country relations in certain countries getting better.
You know, people, when they think about a Trump voter, they usually think about like a white dude with like a red hat on and a pickup truck. And y'all are not that at all. So Donald Trump's team went in, they took down Harriet Tubman's picture for a quick minute. They're trying to like knock out the black museums. What does that have to do with the price of eggs, and how does that impact you?
In some ways, it's a slap in the face. In other ways, I don't care. I care more about how I'm going to take care of my children.
I don't think the average.
So did you hear that? So Van Jones was making the argument, was saying, well, look, he's kind of dismantling things to do with black history, significant people of color, etc. And that guy said, I don't really care. Yeah. So even though he's talking to black voters, the reason why I'm sharing this clip is because it is actually indicative, I believe, of a much wider psychological phenomena going on. Because Trump has enthralled many people from many backgrounds. And of course, as we know, in terms of like the Latin community in America, 60% of them voted for Trump. Yeah, for Trump. 92% of black women voted for Kamala and 85% of black men. In fact, the majority of white Democrat men voted for Kamala. But also as well, there were a lot of women that voted for Trump. Black, Latin, and of course, white as well. You know, so again, I'm not wanting to, this isn't so much about ridicule or FA and all of that kind of stuff. I'm really wanting to reflect on this psychology, so that we can gain a deeper insight and understanding as to why someone like Trump was so appealing to so many people. And it's because of this phenomena, being able to lie shamelessly and with confidence in a world of complexity and uncertainty. Nuance loses out. And basically, bullshit trumps everything. And this is what Duck Larange really does know. This is part of his voodoo, yeah? He knows that on a deep, visceral level, even though his academically is rubbish. It doesn't matter, yeah? Because Trump knows how to trump. Grift, his gift is grift. But let's just see what else this lady says.
Average American cares about that. I know I am sick and tired of seeing black people sit there and complain about something, but not taking action and steps to actually try to change things in an appropriate manner.
Now, look, like that's absolute BS what she says. We all know that black people in particular have been at the forefront of the civil rights movement, justice for all, diversity and inclusion, and all of that kind of stuff, which actually benefited a lot of women, by the way. Yeah, as if you've been noticing, I don't know if you guys have seen, a lot of women have been being sacked, yeah, on the TikToks. A lot of white Caucasian women are being sacked because they also benefited from DEI as well. But for her to say, I don't think they've really contributed and blah blah blah, I mean, like, really? Do you see what I mean? So, and we're going to look through some of the comments as well. Anyway, next.
This man is talking about running for a third term. Now, what do you think about that?
The third term, for me, absolutely not. I think it's at the end of these 4 years, it's time to move on.
this is a prime example of him trolling people because people have said, they're like, oh, if he gets in the office, he's going to be a dictator. He's going to try to run for a third term. So he's like, okay, y'all think I'm going to do that? I'm going to mess with y'all and say this to take y'all out.
I thought you loved this man because he's so authentic and he's such a
But you
truth
need
teller.
to know the difference between somebody trolling somebody, and this is a prime example of him being a troll.
In some ways, I was happier.
Now do you see, again, she's saying you need to know the difference between someone trolling someone and if whether or not they're going to be a dictator and all of that stuff. So she admits that Trump is a troll and she sees that as a good thing. Do you see the cognitive issues here? She's seeing that as a positive thing. And I think so much of what Trump's appeal is that there are a lot of people that are very frustrated, very angry about how their lives have panned out. Because this is really about oligarchy at the end of the day. It's happening across the whole world, of course. But in America, it's more profound, where basically the elites have just, the financial elites have just drunk up all the money. Yeah. Jobs have been outsourced, etc. So people are stressed. People are tired. They're fatigued. They are angry. And Trump, in a way, is like this lightning rod for grievance. Yeah. And when people see him complaining and his grievance, they go, you know what? I feel like that too. And they start blending, twinning. There's a, I can't find where it is in the video, but there's a psychological term for this, which was described in that Machiavelli, where when a person really starts to identify with a leader, if you criticize that leader, they start to see it as an affront to them personally. So isn't this interesting? I'll just play out the last little bit of the clip.
Here, in some ways, I was sadder. I'm going to tell you right now, there is a movement in Black America toward the Republican Party. And we talked to 3 people who are amazing representatives of that movement. Usually when you think about a Trump.
Interesting, isn't it? It'd be nice to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Wow. Yeah. So again, this is the power of perception. What Machiavelli so well understood. He knows that it doesn't even matter so much what you say or do, as long as people perceive, as long as you can convince people on a superficial level. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just read through some of the comments. Let me just do share again. Because I want you to see some of the reaction to what these people said, and we're going to look at the comments. So when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Yeah, the first time, Maya Angelou. I voted, and someone here says, Random Moan says, I voted for him because he's a terrible person and I like terrible people. Bro, I think that makes you a terrible person. Yeah. You know, I always look through some of the comments on these videos to get that wisdom from a collection of people reading into a situation. And then most people don't want to admit they're wrong. And then Sharon says here, self-hatred is a real mental issue. Perfect. This one here says, perfect example of people voting against their own interests. And then this person saying, I wanted an arsehole. Wow. Such a well thought out position. So basically you admitted to being a sociopath. Yeah. And then this person says here, which is a very good point. This is the result of education being so critically underrated. I'm not upset by their decision. I'm upset they can't articulate a reasonable argument on how they got to said decision. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, and then not a single one of them understands basic economics. And then here, too many people mistake authenticity or speaking your mind as being honest, but they don't realize almost everything Trump says is a lie, yeah? Which we all know to be the case. So I wanted to show you that, to again give a different insight that this phenomena of Trump doesn't just apply, like Van Joe says, to kind of angry white guys with MAGA caps. It's more profound than that, because we're talking about people that have a cognitive bias. They see the loud brashness and the bombacity and the basically being an asshole as authentic. So that's a values issue. Yeah, that's a values issue. Why do they believe that someone who is effectively saying I'm an asshole and like voting for someone who's an asshole, why do you think that person is going to treat you well? Yeah. So there's so many of these different things going on. Now I just want to show you a little clip here, and it's a little again, like I said, this person that was like, oh, what you whittering on about, blah blah blah. And you know, this isn't a major shade, but what I want to share is, remember I was talking about food and diet, exercise and stuff like that. Now we know the whole world is having an obesity issue. Yeah, obesity is increasing all over the world because of what? Fast food, high sugary drinks, etc. All of this kind of stuff. But we know that this is a major problem, of course, in America, where I think around about 50% of the population will be considered potentially obese. Of course, it varies from state to state, town to town. When you take into account Los Angeles, you know, a lot of people wanting to stay in shape there. You know, they're there. Whatever, or you know, Miami Beach, where they're doing their exercises, but as a general overall. And of course, one's diet has a huge impact on one's intelligence and the ability to provide, to be able to process information. And you remember one of the things that Trump said, he says, I love the uneducated. And I made a little note here. So I put here, but as a wider example of how a lack of education is desired by most authoritarians, because it limits the imaginations of people, yeah, their capacity to envision alternatives. So if we think of, in terms of education, like being well read, for example, or being well traveled, now. Travel, of course, they say broadens the mind. Travel is one of the best educations that you can have. It's one of the most effective. Obviously not everyone can afford to travel, etc. and stuff like that, but it makes such an impact in the shortest amount of time, because when you go to another culture, and particularly another culture that speaks another language, you have to completely open your mind. You become a sponge. You're sensitized to everything, and your learning speed squares. Yeah. And what happens is, when you go to other countries in particular, and the cultures that are very dissimilar to your own, you learn a lot about your own culture, and you learn a lot about yourself. It's one of the best ways to understand yourself is to go to a foreign country and live in a foreign space, or even potentially speak a foreign language. Now, as we know, not many Americans are able to travel. Not many have passports. And now this is becoming a real issue, because you're probably not even going to be able to vote without your passport going forward in the future under this authoritarian regime. But what the traveling does is it gives you a flavor of something else, something foreign. And it can fascinate you, and it can stimulate your imagination. If we think, for example, it was very popular in the 1700s and the 1800s for men of learning and income. Obviously, they had to be able to, this is talking about the UK, England, really at the time. Men of income and learning, it was required of them to go on the tour. It was called the Grand Tour, where they would go through, you know, France, Italy, maybe Spain, and certainly Greece, etc. Maybe even some go to North Africa, so that they could be exposed to the world and become cultured. learn different things, go out of their comfort zone. And they very often brought back antiquities. Not all of them were genuine. Some of them, they were sold knockoffs, but they would write treatises, they would write diaries. These men would often become parts of parliament, etc. And they would take their experiences, and they would the styles of their country houses would be influenced. For example, this is why we often have that kind of what do they call it, neoclassical. So much of the neoclassical style, the new classical, was because so many of these eligible men and women later on would take the grand tour, and they would look at the ruins of Rome and the pillars, and they would look at the temples of Poseidon and Zeus in Greece, etc. And they would become inspired. Yes, inspired. So education stimulates the imagination. Anyway, what else did I put in these notes here? So their capacity to envision alternatives. It also has the effect of making them averse. So this is when they're being dumbed down, not having an education. It also has the effect of making them averse to intelligent thoughts and arguments, especially sophisticated arguments of nuance. Yeah, they will shun those things because they cannot grasp any form of complexity. So when one is making nuanced arguments about things, if a person can't cope with that, they will often, and you would have heard this in your life, many of my viewers that watch me are, you know, intelligent people. Not that everyone else is not intelligent, but I've just noticed, just by the quality of the comments and the quality of the feedback, that these are thinking people. But if you're not a thinking person, then subtlety can overwhelm you. Yeah, and it almost starts to become another language, because maybe so many of the words that are being used they don't understand, or they've heard them before and they're maybe not sure what the meaning is. So then it just becomes a haze. Yeah, it just becomes a blur, and it doesn't make sense. And then the person will say, oh, stop wittering on, because what they're basically saying is, I can't understand what it is that you're saying. It's just, what are you talking about? Dumb it down. Keep it simple. Simple, simple, simple. That's what I want to see. Simple, simple, simple. Yeah. Which is a natural reaction for many human beings to have. Yeah. And again, like I said, it's not a diss. It's just a factor on that bell curve. The lower IQ a person has, the more they're going to reach for a simplistic thing. Yeah, because it's comforting. It stops the brain fog. Yeah, stops the brain hurt. Anyway, so I put here, meaning they will seek out the more all the more that which is dumbed down to their level of comprehension. Then the whole society is vulnerable to BS. Thus, figures like Trump and MTG, yeah, who you know I call leaky douchebag blowhard. So what we're seeing here, and it's not just in America, it's around the world, but in America it's more pronounced. We've been seeing the fruition of decades of efforts by people in power who wish to maintain their power to dumb down the populace. Because the more you're able to dumb down the populace, the less able those people will be able to remove you from power, because the less tool they have for critical thinking. There's literally less imagination. Oh, let me just plug in my... Yeah, literally less imagination, because a mind, as you guys know, it needs to be fed. A consciousness needs to be fed. And this is why it's so important to take children on adventures and travel and all of which we all know and understand. And this is why it's so much easier for children to learn languages, because their brains are plastic. Yeah, they're building, the brain is growing at a rapid amount, building all sorts of kind of neurons, etc., and all of that stuff. And of course, children are immensely curious anyway. And I think it was one of the Jesuits that said, way back when I was doing my research on Italian culture and all that stuff from like the 1700s, when I was looking at Galileo and all of this kind of stuff. And I think one of the Jesuits said words to the effect of, Give me a boy until he is aged 8. And after that, he'll be part of the church forever. Yeah. So there was a recognition that, particularly as well, when we're young, we are more, I think they say more in the alpha brain state, but essentially childhood, especially up to the age of 8, we are literally kind of in this highly suggestible state. We're almost in a state of hypnosis. So whatever goes in at that time is going to form part of our neural pathways. So of course, if things are dumbed down or you're not eating the proper diet, etc., and we all are a reflection of our parents and all of these kind of things. And if your parents aren't particularly educated and they are kind of reaching for simplicity as well, then, you know, your chances of being able to break out of that become more and more difficult because you literally cannot imagine it. And this is what this is about. And this is what Dr. Larange is talking about when he says he loves the uneducated. He's basically saying, I love these people because they can't imagine an alternative to me. I mean, think about it. When he stood up there in front of his big crowd and he says, I don't even like you. I just need your vote. And they still were, woo! Really? Did you not hear the words that the man said? It's like they were deaf. When he said, I don't even like you, collectively they thought to themselves, well, he's not, we all know he's not talking about us. He's not talking about me, like that woman was saying in the video. Well, that was just trolling. You need to be able to tell the difference between trolling and blah, blah, blah. You know, people saying he's a dictator. Yes, he is. Didn't Congress today or something like that pass? They passed something where basically they said US citizens can be deported. I mean, it's just like, you know, he is a dictator. Of course he is. That's who he admires. All the evidence is there and you see it in the actions. I think some judges just struck down the Aliens Act, you know, for when America is at war. That's been struck down, but there's so much other bilge. So I'm going to share one more thing here, and this is just more a comment about diet. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, because I just thought, let me just see who this person is. I just instinctively, I thought, I bet they have a little channel, but let's just see what content they're sharing. Yeah. Anyway, so this video, it's got 125 views. Yeah. So congratulations on that. But I'm just going to share. Yeah. And we remember thinking about food and diet and how it works in terms of intellect and IQ. Share. So let's just put here. And the clip we're going to look at is this.
My dinner tonight is country fried chicken. It's got potatoes, chunks of chicken. Looks pretty good. Corn. And of course, my black pepper. And it's gonna be good. I've had these before. They're pretty good. It's 16 grams of protein, 440 calories, which is a pretty good bit, but some of them other ones had more. But yeah, it's a good little meal.
I think I'll just stop it there. Right. Remember I was talking about food, diet, and stuff like that. I don't want to be rude, but we have certain words in the UK for food like that. Did you see the gelatinous, gloopy quality of it? Now, don't get me wrong. We all know the foods we should eat and shouldn't eat. Yeah, we've all been there. I'm not going to stand up there and pretend that I've not eaten bags of Doritos and Pringles and all of this kind of stuff and this, that, and the other. And I've had late night kind of like meals, doner kebabs, and all of that stuff. Yes, I've done that, just like everybody else. But I don't have it all the time, and I certainly don't make videos about it. Yeah, that kind of food. How can that be? When you just look at it, nothing in there was fresh. Did you hear the sound? That, yeah, that what that is, that's the starch. Yeah. So even though it said she was saying it was around about 440 calories, I think that was the word. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Because calories and spikes in sugar do not necessarily correlate. For example, you can eat a type of bread or pasta. If you think of pasta, for example, pasta minus the sauce and the stuff that we put on the pasta really doesn't contain that many calories, but is very highly glycemic. Yeah, glycemic means it creates sugar spikes. And remember too, as well, what I was sharing earlier about Alzheimer's and how they want to categorize it as type 3 diabetes. Foods like that spike the blood sugar. But it's also as well, you can see there's not going to be that much nutritional quality in there. So yes, there'll be the protein from the chicken, but what's in the sauce? Yeah. Yes, there's some corn in there, but corn again, as actually as a type of, it's effectively really a grain, really. But like when you eat corn on the cob, for example, it really doesn't actually have that much nutrition in it. This is why tortillas, for example, which are primarily made out of corn, have to have vitamins added to them. There was this thing, like for example, the ancient peoples of South America knew that the nutritional content of corn wasn't very high, so I think they would grind it on certain stones, and that would actually put some minerals and ions in there via that process. But if you just eat plain corn on its own, it really doesn't have much nutrition. Yeah, but it can seem that way. That needed, I mean, I could never eat something like that personally. Maybe if I was absolutely starving and I hadn't eaten anything for a week, yes, maybe I could. But there was no salad there. There was no avocado, fresh tomatoes, onions, some courgettes fried up, etc. Beautiful, some vegetables, a piece of fruit, some blueberries, yada, on and on. Even a glass of red wine with that, even the wine would have helped uplift it a little bit. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because there is a strong correlation between what we eat and our ability to process information speedily. Yeah. And what can happen as well, particularly when we start getting to very kind of exposed high glycemic, high sugar, basically, it can really impede our ability to function and to discern. And if we do that over a long period of time, yes, then we can start developing plaques in the brain, etc., and all these different things. So again, don't completely quote me on that. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional, but they are starting to say that there is correlation, potential causality between diets like that, yeah, which is quite typical, not for all Americans, of course, but that is quite typical. It's that fast food, pre-frozen, it's cheap, it's affordable. And of course, look, when we think of the tariffs, I mean, if you want a nice piece of steak now in the States, oh my gosh, you guys know how much that is costing. I think, do you remember when Sheila was sharing the other day? Oh no, maybe I think she shared it off show. And she was talking about a bit of steak, bake, brisket or something like that. And she said it used to cost about $20. It's a cheaper cut of meat, but you cook it down and it becomes nice and tender with time. She said this is now over $50, $30 more. So do you see how, together with the deliberately trying to dumb people down, making the healthier foods much more expensive. Even the cheaper foods are going to be becoming much more expensive. And then think of what effect that is having on people's blood sugar and their cognition. And you see how it all folds in to, as part of a regime wanting to keep people, you know, not very bright. So let me just see. Let's do one more. Let's go back just briefly to close out with that why foolish people rise to power. Let me see if there's do I want to, there's a bit here. I think what did I want to show? Here we are. This is talking about the network of incompetence. So I'll just share this bit.
This is how I use the Google Pixel 9 to capture my attentions.
Us YouTubers need to get our
time in the market versus timing the market. Sounds similar, but are very different strategies to invest your money. This episode.
All right. The network of incompetence.
Machiavelli observed something crucial about power structures. Incompetent leaders tend to surround themselves with even less competent subordinates. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." What Machiavelli understood was that weak leaders deliberately select weaker subordinates to ensure they never face threats to their authority.
Duck L'Orange, absolute classic, but not just Duck L'Orange, Putin as well, you know, Kim Jong-un. It is part of that playbook. Those that are incompetent or power hungry, they fear intelligent and incisive people because they know that they are better. So they surround themselves with incompetent people. We've seen, haven't we, with Duck L'Orange in the Oval Office, and they all start with these almost bowing. Oh, wow, under your presidency, you've done incredible things and blah, blah, blah. One thing I should mention, that in Dante's Inferno, again, around this time of Machiavelli, Dante, if you've not read Dante's Inferno, it's an absolute classic of Western literature. And it talks about the Virgil effectively going into hell, the different circles of hell, and exploring that, walking through that. And it's as a critique and commentary on society. And the lowest rung, the last rung of hell before you get to the devil himself, was for flatterers. For flatterers. Because according to Dante, they were the worst of all, because they are the ones that keep the incompetent leader in place and they don't act. And my goodness, aren't we seeing this right now? Anyway, I'll play a little bit more.
This creates a cascading effect where incompetence becomes institutionalized. Dr. Toma Kamoro Premuzic, an organizational psychologist, describes this as competence threatening. Insecure leaders feel threatened by competent team members who might expose their limitations or eventually replace them. Instead of selecting for talent, they select for loyalty and non-threatening personalities.
There you are. What's Trump always talking about? Loyalty. Yeah, he knows. He knows. Yeah, he knows.
Think of it as a competence drought that spreads outward from central leadership. In Emperor Commodus's court, capable administrators were systematically replaced by flatterers and entertainers, accelerating Rome's decline. In contemporary Brazil, the Centrome political system institutionalizes this dynamic, where incompetent political appointees secure positions through personal connections rather than merit. African nations like Zimbabwe under later Mugabe saw a systematic replacement of capable administrators with partisan loyalists, devastating economic consequences following. This creates what organizational scientists call homophily, the tendency of individuals to associate with similar others. In power structures, this means incompetent leaders create islands of incompetence around themselves, insulated from conflicting viewpoints and constructive criticism. Ask yourself, have you ever worked in an organization where asking questions was discouraged? Where raising concerns was labeled as not being a team player? These are symptoms of this network effect in action. Yet even knowing all this, we still find ourselves drawn to leaders who offer simplistic answers.
There you are. So So I hope you found that interesting there, because we're almost at the hour now. Let me know your thoughts on that. Have you also experienced that in your life where you've been in an office or corporate environment or any environment which would require a meritocracy, and you've seen basically people that are far more, less competent than yourself being elevated to positions of power? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to leave it there. I've come in at just under the hour. Please, of course, remember to like and subscribe and share. Big love and see you soon. All right, bye-bye for now.